Hi, hello, how are you? I'm Pia, and today I'm going to be wrapping up all the books that I read in September and October. I didn't film a wrap up in September. I didn't read that much, and then I was like, oh, maybe I just won't do wrap ups. And then in October, I read a ton of books. I also made a ton of reading vlogs if you haven't checked those out, but I do like wrap ups. I like TBRs, but I'm back, baby. This might be a long one. Also, I'm sitting on my floor. I tried to clean it up slightly. I'm also sick at the moment. I have a cold. I obviously don't own any of these books. If you didn't know, I'm in college right now. Peter is now huffing and puffing. Really? Calm down. If I at all like sound sick or like sniffle, I really do apologize. Okay, so the first book that I finished was It Happened One Summer. I tried to read this. I was doing like an end of summer. I've canceled a lot of videos. I was doing like an end of summer reading vlog where I read a bunch of summer books at the end of summer. But anyway, so I read this. This is by Tessa Bailey, and it has gotten a lot of hype, I think, from Book Talk. I read this. I listened to the audiobook, I believe. This is my first Tessa Bailey, I believe. I was never really interested in her Fixer Up series. I like smut to a certain extent, but it seems a little bit much for me. But so I read this. It's supposed to be, I think it's like a play on like Schitt's Creek or something, which again, I also don't watch, so I don't really know. I ended up giving this 2 out of 5 stars. It was fine. I don't know. I felt like it was super formulaic. Someone who reads a lot of romance, and I think probably before this I read a ton of romance. I have no recollection. It just was so predictable, and I didn't really like our love interest. He was just that kind of like scruffy guy who's like really grumpy except to one girl, and she was just like really snotty until like that third act when she like had her revelation or whatever. I didn't love it. It doesn't make, I have an accent now, doesn't make me want to pick up anymore, but I do have an arc of the next book. I actually did like the romance of the side characters, which was like her sister and the love interest's best friend, I think. I'm interested to read that one, but it didn't make me like fall in love with the author or the series or anything like that. Then I read This Will Only Hurt a Little by Busy Phillips. This is her memoir. I really enjoyed this. I love a celebrity memoir from time to time. I really do. Busy Phillips is someone I really admire. She's such a blunt and real person, and I really enjoyed the story she had to tell. It was very raw and very emotional at times, to be honest. I honestly really enjoyed it. I listened to the audiobook, which I think is like one of my favorite ways to listen to memoir. I think it just adds a whole nother level to the piece, and it was just like really great. A lot of people probably don't even know, probably like people my age don't really even know who Busy Phillips is. She's an actress. She is probably best known for her time on Dawson's Creek, Freaks and Geeks, Cougar Town, and stuff like that. It actually made me watch Cougar Town, which is fantastic if you have not seen it. Yeah, I really like her. I like what she has to say. I give this 4 out of 5 stars. I genuinely like don't know what a 5-star memoir is to me. Not that I don't think her life experience warrants a 5-star. I honestly don't think I can rate someone's life experiences. I don't know. It has definitely stuck with me, and I think about it a lot. Then I read Finlay Donovan is Killing It. This is like a cozy mystery kind of. I don't even know how to describe it because it definitely has that like sweet coziness to it. It is about this mother who is kind of a mess. She is a writer, a mystery writer, is trying to balance her life. She just got like divorced, and her ex-husband's like moving on and has this new gal, and he wants to like take the kids, and she really doesn't have anything. She's like at a Panera talking to some woman about, I think she's talking to her agent about like her book deal or whatever. Essentially someone overhears this conversation and doesn't understand what she's talking about and thinks that she is a hit woman, and so she hires Finlay Donovan to kill her husband. So essentially she ends up becoming a hit woman, which is iconic. Like, she tries her best not to be, which I think is kind of, I think you could love it or hate it in that way. It's a really fun time, but this was an especially fun one. Again, I do have an arc of the next book. It ended on a really great, like, not a cliffhanger, but such a great way to set up the next book. But this was so fun. It's like mommy drama, it is like rich people problems, it is so fun. And then you obviously have like murder mysteries, and she's writing this book about kind of the murder she's doing. A little bit of a romance, which is like the only thing I didn't really care about. Generally, if I'm not here for the romance, I'm not gonna like it. That's why I give this 4 out of 5 stars. I just didn't think it was necessary at all, but everything else was just like so great. Then I read Happily Ever Afters. This is a YA about a girl who gets into this really like prestigious like art school for writing, and she is very insecure, I guess, about her writing. She's mainly a romance writer, and she really believes that it's this huge practical joke on her that she got into this really cool school. There's also like other like specialties. There's like drama people and costume people. There's like a baking, oh my god, the baking. And she gets kind of involved with this like kind of love triangle. She really likes this one guy in her class who's like exactly like this guy she's writing in her novel, her piece, whatever she's writing. And then there's like, you know, the best friend next door, the unsung hero. And this was fun. I mean, it was sweet. It was really cute, like YA. I think it also had some really like deeper elements of like coming of age, coming into your own, and like being secure in yourself and in your passions, which I think is really interesting. YA stories like you don't have characters that generally know what they want to do in life and what they're passionate about, so I think it was really interesting having that perspective. We also had some disability rep. I believe her brother was on the spectrum. I can't speak to the representation at all on voices for women of color, which is awesome. Yeah, overall, like, I gave it 3 stars. I thought it was more enjoyable than it wasn't. I don't like love triangles personally, but if that's your thing, I'm sure you would like it. And it was a little bit tropey at times, and you kind of wanted to shake the character, being like, what are you doing? You're so dumb. I DNF Mexican Gothic. If you don't know what DNF is, it means I did not finish a book, and I typically means I will not plan to come back to it. Especially if I'm not liking a book around the halfway point. I'm gonna mark it in my Goodreads because I gave it the fair shot. I gave it the college try. What didn't work for me? I mean, I didn't write it in my Goodreads review. I have no recollection of why. Gothic, it's about like this haunted house. It's about like people gaslighting this woman because she's like trapped in this haunted house and no one's like caring about her. I'm sure it was like boring and didn't capture my attention in any way, and that is something that I really need, especially with like spooky stories. Like, I am pretty hard to sell on those types of things. So obviously that's my personal opinion. I had seen it a lot. Again, I think this was for a video that was canceled. Then I read the Anthropocene reviewed. I'm like an idiot, so like just disregard me. This is John Green's newest book. This is kind of a memoir of sorts. It is basically John Green talking about his life and his life in quarantine. It's a really like timely piece, which I think is really interesting. Addressed the elephant in the room of like, hey, we're in the middle of a pandemic, if you didn't know. Hello, my camera died, and I took a soup break, and I put on the sweatshirt for continuity purposes, though I am sweating. So John Green starts his book saying, you know what, I don't like how reviewers give star ratings to things, and then proceeds to give star ratings to all these things in his life, which is fine. It's a little hypocritical, but like, we love him anyway. I've said this before, I'll say it again. I'll read anything John Green writes. I think he's a fantastic writer. Is he like the most interesting human in the planet? Like, no, not at all. He's like just some white dude that wrote a bunch of books. I'm not saying that he has like a really worldly perspective of life, but I do think he has some interesting opinions, and I think he's a really smart person. Gave it 5 stars. Then I read, very popular now, is the X-Hex. I got an arc of this, so I read it before it came out, and this was fantastic. This is so freaking great. This is written by Erin Sterling, just like her pen name. She also writes under Rachel Hawkins. I really liked her YA series, so I was really excited for this one. It's getting a lot of mixed reviews right now, just because it's so popular, and that's like just what happens when something's so hyped up that people are like, well, actually it's not that good. I'm here to tell you it is. What I wanted, it's essentially like if you aged up like Hermione and Harry, but that's just like the vibes. It's about this girl who's like, when she's like 19, my age, gets dumped by her like summer fling or whatever, but they were like intense, like hot and heavy, right? And he's like, yo, like, I'm so sorry, but like, I'm betrothed. And like, she's like, well, you fucking lied to me, like, why are you doing all this shit to me? Which, like, facts. So it goes back to like England or some shit, and she's like all upset and whatnot, and she's 19, so like, judgment. So she like drowns her sorrows in vodka, which honestly like is not your alcohol of choice. If anything, like tequila. Like, she like accidentally hexes him. I think she like fake hexes him. Like, she's like, oh, this is like hilarious, like, cause like I'm just like kidding. So now he comes back like 9 years later or whatever. She is a professor of like normal history at like a history and witch university. Although, can we talk about how in Return to Halloween Town, the university is not called Halloween Town University or Halloween University. It is called Witch University. Why the fuck is it called Witch University? And his like dad is like a headmaster or something. I don't really know how like prestigious colleges work. Loki owns the town. It's kind of like a Salvatore Brothers kind of situation where like we're like there the whole time, like they were like the founders or whatever. Honey Buns comes back. Yo, I'm like not gonna try to see her because like I know she hates me, and I'm also not married at this point. It's 9 years later, not married, didn't do that thing, and I just gotta like reset the ley lines, whatever the fuck that means. They run into each other and they have to like figure shit out because like he's hexed, he's like dealing with shenanigans. Also, there's like ghosts. Ley lines have not made sense to me since I read the Raven Cycle. Like, I do not understand. And through this they're like reconnecting and having this like beautiful moment. I thought it was great. I really loved the romance. Like, it was very believable to me. Some people have argued like, you know, how strong is your like love, right? You know, at 19 and then lasting 9 years. But I feel like maybe I'm like a hopeless romantic at this point. If it's there, it's just like, you know, in the back of your closet, and then you like open the door and it's like right there, and you know, then you have construction. Okay, the last book I read in September was Heartstopper Volume 3. I can't really say too much about this. This is following Nick and Charlie, who are these beautiful sweet cinnamon rolls. One of them is kind of like dealing with coming out and understanding his identity, and one of them is already out. And I'm dealing with construction and trying to talk about a sweet romance, okay? This is set on their trip to France, I think, over summer. And it's really cute. I mean, like, the relationship's developing, and we're dealing with some also like queer topics, which is really interesting. This does have eating disorders and self-harm. If you are sensitive to those things, just know I feel you. I feel you on a on a level that is higher than God. I mean, anyway, everyone has their own things, so tread with caution. But it was great. I gave it 4 stars. Okay, my battery's already dying. Okay, let's go fast. I read The Lost Book of the White. This is the second book in the Elder Curses series. This is by Wesley Chu and Cassandra Clare. I haven't read a Shadowhunters book in like a couple of years, and I really did forget like most things, and I also didn't remember when this was set because like everything just jumps back and forth in time. With that being said, I did enjoy the ride. Can I actually tell you what happened in this book? Absolutely not. About it. If I like really think about it, I can probably remember some things. This did spark my love again for the Shadowhunter books. I don't know, there's something about it, even though they don't really stick in my head apparently. I do really love them, and I really appreciate them for the fun, wild time that they offer. Then I read Bridge of Souls. This is the third Cassidy Blake book by Victoria Schwab. Are there gonna be more books in the series? I don't know. I really don't care at this point. I really enjoyed City of Ghosts. I don't know. I think they're lame to a certain extent. I think if I was a young reader, as these are targeted towards, I would probably not be having the best time. I mean, maybe I would because they're essentially the same thing over and over again. Then I read A Good Girl's Guide to Murder. Whoever recommended me this, thank you. It was not even on my radar. I do own this book at home, I believe. I listened to this audiobook. If you can, I highly recommend doing that. I actually have the audiobook for the next book. I'm so excited. These have gotten nothing but praise, so like I'm just gonna keep telling you to read them. This is fantastic. It's about this girl who's like really interested in true crime, and she decides to do her like senior projects, thesis thing. She's in high school. None of that makes sense. But she's doing it on essentially this murder. This girl witnessed it. Then her like boyfriend turned up dead essentially, and so they were like, oh, bang bang boom, he killed her, like case closed. But is it? So she goes back, is investigating all this stuff because she believes he was innocent. Holy crap, is this a wild ride. Oh my god, it was a roller coaster of emotions, of feelings, of reveals. I'm just thinking about some of the things that happened in this book, and I'm just like, how who thought of that? Like, I don't even know. I loved it. It was so great. It reminds me a lot of Sadie by Courtney Summers, so I think if you enjoyed that, you'll enjoy this, or vice versa. Then I read Tilly and the Book Wanderers. This is the first book in the Pages & Co series. I talked about this in a 5-star prediction video, so obviously I thought I was gonna give it 5 stars. I give it 3 stars, and that is a generous 3 stars. Nothing happened. I say this a lot about books. I'm like, oh, nothing happened. I am aware that something happened. You had to write 50,000 words somehow. Something had to happen, but it wasn't interesting enough that it mattered. Like, there was no like plot structure to this book. Like at the end, like everything just starts happening and you're like, I think some things were interesting. Like, I mean, I think it's an interesting world, it's an interesting concept. I don't think it was done well, like at all. Then I read The Duke and I. This is the first book in the Bridgertons series. I read this because I want to read the other book. I don't think it was very good. There's a scene that is non-consensual and very, very unnecessary. Oh my god, it's very infuriating. I don't know why it exists. Daphne and Simon are beautiful characters. I think that Netflix just took this diamond in the rough, to put it nicely, and really just made it polished and beautiful. The show even has this scene, but they make it slightly better. It's completely unnecessary. It's completely unnecessary. I wanted more from this book, especially since watching the show. You get so much of like the family dynamics and the different characters, whereas in the book it's just kind of like do 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 do. That's what happens. Hopeful that the next books are better. Okay, and then I read the second epilogue, which I don't know why it's like a separate thing, but it's a separate thing on Goodreads. I gave it 3 stars. I don't know why it exists. I don't know. I mean, it's like sweet. It's like, hey, let's catch up with you later, and then it's like, oh, you know, years later. I read The Hazelwood. This is when I got into my process of randomly selecting books to read, and it was honestly the best time. I read The Hazelwood. It is about this girl whose grandmother wrote this book that's like very, like, no one fucking has ever heard of it. She lived like in seclusion. Oh, so like the girl's looking for her mom. Like her mom like is yeeted out of there. Like we don't know where she went. She like enlists the help of this guy who's like her friend kind of, and he like is a big fanatic of this world and this rare book. It's interesting. It's a lot darker than I would have thought. I think the reveals were really fun. In general, I think it was like unfinished in some ways. It's not as satisfying in the end. There is a sequel. But yeah, it was like very unexpected. I gave it like 3.5 out of 5 stars. Heard of this and even like thought about picking it up. I honestly would recommend it because I think it's really fun and like a good fast paced fairy tale that's like really dark. Then I read The Girl Who Drank the Moon. This is also like a very fable-y fairy tale kind of vibe, but this is a middle grade. This town sacrifices a child every year because they believe like this witch is gonna eat the child, and that's how like their town is happy. Which is like very interesting sociology. Which is like, I don't know what the fuck they're doing. But so she feeds them Starlight and she like sends them off to have a good life and finds them a good family. This one time she gets this one kid. She accidentally feeds her Moonlight, which has like way more power. And so she has all this magical power. But the witch herself, the old witch, does not know what the frick to do with her. So she like captures all her power, and it won't like come about again until like she's like 13 or 16 or something. And by that time, like the witch will be dead. So she'll like be like, see you later. It's like very interesting. It reminded me a lot of The Hazelwood. I thought it was fun. Gave it 3 stars. Then I read The Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires by Grady Hendrix. This is my second Grady Hendrix. This was unbelievable. This was crazy. I honestly like don't think I'm a person that's like, I love reading about vampires. Vampire Diaries really like just like smushed down any desire for me to care about it. The issue lies within the fact that I kept charging my camera battery for like 15 minutes and that's why I kept dying. It definitely took vampires to a different level than I thought it would be. It's very gross at times and very interesting. I mean, it was just like very frustrating as well because it's about this group of women and especially this one mom in particular who is like noticing that something is going wrong and that this guy is shady as hell and everyone's just gaslighting her. And hashtag reasons why I hate men. Obviously it's horror. Like it is horror. Like do not let the cover fool you. Do not let anything else fool you. I've like lost my voice in this period of time. I give it 4 stars. I was like listening to it in my kitchen and I was like making something and I was like, my jaw hit the floor. Then I read I'm Not Dying With You Tonight. This is by Jilly Siegel and Kimberly Jones. This is a like dual POV YA story. It's really short. It's about 2 girls. It's set this one night essentially, which is why it says I'm Not Dying With You Tonight. And they kind of get thrown together. I'm sorry, I'm opening my water. While all of this violence is going on at their school and then just like in their town, and they're really just kind of running from it, and they have this really unlikely bond as they are 2 people that are trying to stick together in the face of this like horrible just violence. It's crazy. It's a lot about like prejudice and your like kind of internal biases, which is very interesting. I really love that we have those 2 different perspectives. I think that really solidifies that, and I think it's a really great YA. It's definitely super fast paced and not an easy read because of the subject matter, but it's a quick read because it is, you know, set over, I really love stories like that are, you know, set over a short amount of time. It serves its purpose in such a short amount of pages and words, and I think that that's really it's really effective. Yeah, I haven't really heard anyone talk about this book, but I think it's definitely underrated. And I guess if you like books, The Hate U Give and like Angie Thomas's books or Tiffany D. Jackson's books, Nick Stone's books, those kinds of things, because it does handle some heavy subject matter. And I had a reread. I reread Clockwork Angel by Cassandra Clare. Like I said, I kind of wanted to reread the Shadowhunter books because I did read that like kind of latest one, and I love these books. I didn't rate this one. I don't know what to rate this because my general enjoyment, like I love these books, have such a like attachment to them. I don't know if like they're the best written books, I don't know if they're the best like thought out books, but they definitely like served their purpose and they were really new and different at the time. I think is also something to consider. You know, like I'm already saying, consider the context. Then I read We Are Not Free by TRACI CHEE. I so apologize for how I'm speaking today. This is about, I want to say it's like 12 different kids and young adults like are sent to Japanese internment camps, and you get like a snippet of each of them. Again, this is a really difficult story. It was really interesting nonetheless. I think a really great job making like a historical fiction in general and also just like such a heavy topic really approachable and really readable, especially for a like young adult audience. But they also, you know, dealt with normal teen things and normal kid things. Didn't really think it benefited from having so many different characters. It's in general a kind of shorter book. It's on the shorter side. I think because it followed so many different people, it was really hard to kind of differentiate them. Of course they had their own quirks, they had their own family dynamics and all these things, and they were all kind of interconnected in a way which was really awesome. It was kind of this whole big friend group and their extended family. What would have made it better, for lack of a better word, would be to only follow a few characters. It would have gotten a lot closer, whereas you were constantly switching between perspectives. You only had really like a chapter with a character to get to know them. I think it would have benefited from just having some more direct focus on a few characters rather than splitting focus so many different ways. And I read The Witches. I wanted to read something short and kind of spooky. I'm working through Roald Dahl's backlist. I wasn't like a huge reader when I was a kid. I only read like a few books, kind of stuck to those certain authors and series and things like that. So I read The Witches, and I had never read that as a kid. It does a good job being a very nonsensical kind of story in that children's minds wander kind of way. I do talk about plot a lot, obviously, because that's like generally like what I can talk about as a whatever my job is right now. Generally, like I'm not gonna say like this children's book didn't have enough like character development. It painted such beautiful like colorful pictures, but it definitely got lost with the plot. Last 3 books I'm not going to talk about too much because I have a whole video about them. I read Rosemary's Baby. I wouldn't call it a horror. Horror fiction, classics, thriller, mystery, fantasy, paranormal. Yeah, I'd call it like paranormal suspense. It was kind of a vibe for a while. I mean, I like really was happy I read it in October because it was very like spooky and eerie for a lot of it, because you really don't know what's going on until like the very end. I think in that way it is really great. It has this great build up, but I do think that, at least for me, the reveal and the thing we were working towards was kind of unsatisfying, and it just wasn't scary enough. I obviously don't want to spoil it at all because I do think like it's a fun book to read. I was expecting it to be a lot more sinister in some ways, and I also think that the ending in general was but it left me unsatisfied in general. I don't want to get into spoiler territory. I'm really trying to be careful with what I say, but it's essentially about this woman named Rosemary who moves to this apartment with her husband, and they have these weird neighbors who are like really involved in their life. Eventually Rosemary gets pregnant and they get really involved with her pregnancy. Then I read Me Talk Pretty One Day. This is a collection of essays by David Sedaris. I personally, like, I have no familiarity with David Sedaris at all. I liked it somewhat. I listened to the audiobook. Again, I like listening to the audiobooks of especially things that are like narrated by the author or like a full cast and like have like some special quirk to them. And this also had like live recordings, which I personally don't like. I found that at the end of the day, I was like, would have enjoyed this more if it was like a comedy special length. If it was like a Netflix comedy special, it was like, you know, an hour and a half or whatever, rather than listening to a 6-hour long audiobook that could have really been pared down to just like the main most interesting stories. And then I read The Namesake. This is the last book I read of the month. This one I was very conflicted about because I think it again suffered from syndrome of like, where are we going? What is the point? I'm not going to say my classic thing of nothing happened, because definitely a lot of things happened. I mean, we do follow the course of this young man's life. I mean, we literally follow him from birth, and he is named this name that has no meaning to anyone except his father, and he is struggling with identity, not only as Indian American, also having this name that relates to no one and connects him to nothing. It gets kind of lost. It gets in that kind of literary fiction territory where we're just following someone's life. When I read a story, and as a writer, as a avid consumer and reader of fiction, everything needs to serve a purpose. You know, like, or else you could cut down your book. I think a lot of things were just unnecessary, didn't serve any greater purpose in the narrative. But like in general, I liked it. I just think that we didn't need so many perspectives on a story that should have been central to the main character, this guy, and like his family. But I don't like cheating. Cheating is a thing that happens at some point. Some characters. Least amount of spoilers I can say. That's just a thing that always annoys me in books. So it kind of just like put the nail on the head on that one. Those are the 1,000,001 books that I read in the last 2 months. I need to not do 2-month wrap-ups because my camera obviously cannot handle it, and neither can my brain right now. I'm going to go back to my scholarly life. I have to go write a term paper. But I hope you enjoyed this video. I talked about a lot of books, so obviously if you want to mention some books that I talked about in the comments, you can totally do that. My camera cut out. Why do we have to be such a mess, guys? I don't know. Thank you. I love you all, my sweet baby angels. Make sure to like and subscribe to all the things, and I will see you in my next video. I promise it won't be this chaotic, and I will get over my cold. Goodbye.